Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I am the Sim. The Bean is here as always. Today he wanted to play his kazoo while I was recording, so you will be hearing that in a few minutes. And we are building a Tudor, an English style Tudor home today. Now I love Tudor homes so much I'm actually making two videos about them back to back. Today we're talking about what we know today as the English Tudor, and we'll talk about the American Tudor revival in sort of part 2. They are of course standalone videos as always, but I just love them and I found a great excuse to build two of them. This is the first time I've actually taken a like a nerd approach, so I am super excited to get started. First, of course, let's talk about the history of this charming and iconic style. What we call an English Tudor today would, at the time of being around 14 to 1600s, have just been called a house. The timber frame construction, oriel windows, steep roofs, and so on were just basic building techniques. In fact, this is what would have been called Tudor architecture at the time. Yes, that is a castle, and no, that is not what we are building today. Timber or half-timber framing filled with stone, plaster, or brick was affordable and sturdy. The cross-gable roof would be thatched or covered in slate shingle tiles, and chimneys would have chimney pots to extend the chimney to get the smoke that much farther away from the thatched roofs. #fire hazard. Moving inside through a thick wooden door, the main floor would usually have a space for conducting the family business. The rest of the house would be an open living area and maybe even have separate bedrooms on a floor above if the fireplaces were centralized and had a chimney to carry heat throughout the house. Those fireplaces would be wide open and provide space to cook, although today many of these practical elements are just decorative with modern gas and electric stoves and whole house heating. You could look through windows, which were rarely standalone and had many small panes in either a grid or diamond pattern, over the family herb garden. Other landscaping items could include a full farm if you're building in more of a rural area, or simply a classic English cottage garden. I'll be showing you my sort of like a nerd cottage garden method today, and don't forget to subscribe and come back for part 2 when we talk about how the Tudor home has been stylized and reimagined into the American Tudor or Tudor revival. Now, of course, I'm building in Windenburg today. This is the world that comes with the pack Get Together. I highly recommend picking up this pack next time there's a sale and you're looking to expand your library. I'm going to be building on this 20 by 20 lot, and we're actually going to build toward the back of the lot for one main reason, which is if you try building from this angle, this wall right here really gets in the way. So if you're ever building on this lot, I recommend trying to build forward in the lot as much as possible and just not really do much in the back. So without further ado, let's get started. Go ahead and grab your little room tool, and what we're going to do is do a base rectangle on the main floor of 6 tiles by 13 tiles. This will be in 4 tiles on one side and 3 on the other, and then you just bring it forward 6. Now we are just doing a 2-level build today, but to keep that original element of the shop area on the first floor, we are going to add that still. So go over in this corner and we're going to draw a 5 by 8 rectangle, just like that, and then over on this side we're going to do another 5 wide rectangle, except this one we're going to bring out to 10. Draw a little 3 by 3 room here, 2 by 3 here, and if you bring up your wall tool and hold control, you can remove this wall. You can also use the sledgehammer tool if you prefer, but this is what your main level should be looking like. We can also grab the flat square and nestle it right in there, and I'm going to pull it around this way. So this will be sort of the shop area. This will be an entryway slash garden storage. We'll have a bathroom here, kitchen, dining, and living space for the family, and then we'll put their bedrooms upstairs. Grab your room tool again, and this time we are actually going to do a 7 by 13 rectangle. So you'll see that the main door will be sheltered a bit down here. That is very classic of the style. You'll either have some sort of window or roof or something over that front door. Now over on this side we'll do a 5 by 7 rectangle. That will be the main bedroom. We'll do a 3 by 3 family bathroom over here. You can go ahead and block off this space. This is going to be the stairway landing. And now we need to grab the custom room tool, because we are going to draw a room that's going to come out to the edge of the roof here, but we're also going to extend a 3 tile segment right there to create one of those oriel windows, which is more or less a bay window. It's a protruding window that is on the 2nd story. But it's also going to get a little bit funky because we're going to add a little diagonal wall here and then bring it back up to meet up. And this will give us 2 other bedrooms, this one of course being slightly larger than this one, but that's okay. Grab some stairs of choice. I prefer to just start with the sturdy stairs and then recolor them later, and you can slide those stairs right into this little stairwell that we made. Now another really standard element of these homes before we get into roofing would be exposed beams in the roof, and you can get that by selecting the room. It has to be directly under the roof, so we'll have a roof here, but you can remove the ceiling by clicking on this little yellow line. Go into your fence options and grab the Smooth Keeper fence. Pick whichever color you're going to be using. I'll probably be using slightly like a warm wood tone, so I'm going to grab the Smooth Keeper, and you're going to draw lines with the Smooth Keeper perpendicular to the ridge of your roof. Then you can grab the inlaid exterior trim in a similar color and place it underneath. And now when you put your roof on, I'll just go inside real quick so you can see. That's sort of what those exposed beams will look like from the inside. They do clip out of the roof a little bit, so it's definitely a stylistic choice sort of thing. Do you want better screenshots inside, or do you want your roof to look better on the outside? Now, if you have Get to Work, you can actually use this fence for window shopping instead. It's quite small, but you can still add that inlaid exterior trim, and then it won't stick out of your roof. But this is going to be a base game and get together only build, so I will not be doing that. But if you have Get to Work, I do recommend using that fence because it eliminates the clipping issues. If you wanted to add any exposed beams up here, you totally can do that as well. Once again, remove your ceiling, grab your fence, and the peak of the roof would be running this way on this part of the build, so you'll want to draw your beams in this direction. Just like that, and once again, grab that inlaid exterior trim, bring it through, and you can just do that wherever you want to. Next up though, let's talk about this roof. Your roof is going to be cross gable, which means you're just going to be using gable roof pieces and then crossing them over one another to cover up the whole roof. Go ahead and start with the largest segment, which will of course be right here. And the default roof pitch is the absolute lowest you want to go when you're building a Tudor style home. They are famous for their steeply pitched roofs, so I'm actually going to bring this up fairly significantly. Once you have your main roof piece done, you can copy and rotate and place it, and resize it for the rest of your roof pieces. Now if you like this look, you can totally leave it, but if you prefer to have more of a clean side, bring this all the way down to one tile wide, and then hold Shift to bring in just this one eave. You can then copy and place the same roof piece, and you're just going to get rid of these eaves instead, and then pull it into your roof to line up. Now you can use this roof piece to copy and place here on our little window segment, and copy and place over here, and this is how you should be looking. Now if you're like me and you don't really like having a massive open expanse of roof, you can actually just add a little dormer. Make sure that the grid is on the highest level right here, and then take your room tool and just draw a little guy in. Once you have your room, you can make it bigger or smaller, and then once again just grab that exact same roof piece and pull it back so that it lines up. If it looks like it's not lining up, but you pull it too far and it overextends, you can adjust the eaves. So in this case, I need the eaves to both be out one, so that's what we've got. Now it would not be uncommon for Tudors to actually have overextended eaves as well, where you could hold Shift and pull out those front-facing eaves one additional sort of section. And in this case, both the eaves are facing out of the build, so we can pull them without holding the Shift key. Now traditionally, these homes would be built on or very close to the ground, so if you want to raise a foundation, I wouldn't raise it too high. However, I'm from the Midwest, and my personal opinion is, if you're not on a foundation, you're asking for flooding problems. So I just feel like no build is complete without one. I've really had to fight myself on that through the series, so I'm going to challenge myself to only leave it one level above the ground. Now you don't have to add stairs in this case, your Sims can just step right on, which is pretty nice. Next up, let's talk about that famous timber framing. Now the easiest way to get all of this is probably just going to be to grab your pack selector and just do Get Together. It's right at the top there. This way, when you go into wallpapers, you can select Show All, and there they are. Now we have a handful here that we're just going to ignore, but most of these we can mix and match with few to no problems. Now how you mix this up and go through it is totally up to you, but in general, if you want to have brick or stone, you'll want to put that on the lower levels, as that would be more sturdy, and then the plaster filled walls would be slightly lighter, so you'd probably build those on top of the rest of your build. However you decide to go, I recommend starting with the most plain colored options, basically without any fancy details or anything, and just start here. Now we can see we've got some white showing down here, no big deal. We can grab pretty much any of these trims and just match up the wood tone. And if you only want to place on a small portion, hold Shift. So hold Shift and it will select just one wall, and then you can place it there. The same thing here. And now that's covered up. Perfect. Now the reason I suggest leaving it at more of the plain swatches first is because next we want to talk about doors and windows. Once again, I'm just going to switch over to Get Together. Now for a home that I'm building, I'm definitely going the more simple direction, so I probably wouldn't be using a lot of stained glass. However, this is a Sims 4, you do you. Maybe it's a very wealthy family that lives here, or maybe you just want to give them something nice. There is also the medieval entry. Now this thick paneled door would be super duper common, so I'm going to use that one for both sort of the entry to my shop area as well as to the main home. Next up, I'm going to grab some windows, and you pretty much don't want to have any standalone windows. So like just leaving this window here, that's a no-go. You'd either want to have a window that already looks like sort of a side-by-side window, or actually place multiple of these side by side. Really, really rare to have a standalone window. Now the diamond cross pattern for the panes is also super common. We only have standalone windows with this pattern in this pack, which is kind of a bummer, honestly. But if you had cottage living, they have some additional sort of diamond pane windows there as well, which makes sense, you know, similar world and construction style. So you could totally use those. And then you can go back in with some of those more sort of fancy swatches, like this one. Just sort of frame out your windows a little bit more. Maybe highlight the main entry to the house by selecting a different texture over there. Now it looks like to place a window up here, I will have to turn on Move Objects, and if you'd like to do that as well, just hit Ctrl-Shift-C and type in bb.move objects. Now I'll just go through and keep placing groups of windows. This is going to be my kitchen, so I am going to place smaller windows there and also smaller in the bathroom, but for my workshop, I don't mind having some larger windows. Now this is sort of a standalone oriel window that you don't actually have to build out, you could just place. Again, it's got stained glass, which is a little bit fancy for this build, but it's so nice. You don't have to worry too much about your windows lining up well in this build. It's definitely a build as you go, make it work for your family sort of style. Now I'm going to grab some roof trim. I, as usual, will be using the beveled out roof trim, and I'm going to try and match that warm wood tone and make sure that I get all of my roof pieces. Now for the rest of the roof texture, you could go with thatched. Now this is sort of the base game thatched option, and I really don't like it very much. If you want to go thatched and you have the option of using the island living or the cottage living thatch, I highly recommend using that, and of course the corresponding roof trim. You could of course go with some blockier shingles to sort of show that slate shingle look, or you can use scalloped shingles if you want more of a storybook direction. Now the storybook home style did sort of come out of the Tudor style, we'll be talking about that in a later video, but if you are impatient and you want to build it now, start with the Tudor base and then basically add a few more whimsical elements, maybe curve a roof, but I'll save the rest of the secrets for later. Now Get Together does also come with a couple of foundation options, which is great because then the wood actually matches, and it kind of matches the stone here on these walls as well. You can also use the slate pavers from the pack to sort of fill in this area here. And finally, I believe the Get Together columns are the superior columns. You can use any of the wooden ones for out here. Very simple ones are of course very simple, very rustic. You could get a little bit more detail with something a little bit more rounded like this. I really like this one. I feel like it really meets between being super simple and rustic with a little bit of decoration without being too much. So I'm going to place those right there. Let's move on to the interior, talk about floors and all that stuff. Now if you really wanted to stick with something super duper rustic, you could totally use this dirt floor. However, I'd like to give my people something a little bit better, so I'm actually going to use these same stone floors in my shop, my sort of garden shed entry area, and my bathrooms, and then go with the hardwood everywhere else. Once you've picked your floor color, of course, switch out those stairs, and you can also add your interior doors. Now Get Together of course does come with one, so you can add an entry door right here. We'll add a door for the bathroom right next to the stairs, and then upstairs we can add 2 bedroom doors side by side, and to make that look a little bit better, you can use your period and comma keys to rotate the door, so it's not all facing the same direction. We'll also have a bathroom door and of course the main bedroom door. Now let's talk about wallpaper. Now because of the way these homes were constructed, for the most part what you're going to see inside is going to reflect what you see outside. Unlike American construction, these timbers are not just 2x4s painted pretty and slapped on the outside of the home. These are actually really thick timbers that would go from the inside to the outside of the house, so you'd actually see this exact same stone inside, unless of course you covered it with plaster. So for the most part, that's what you'd be seeing inside. Of course you could add something more decorative, add some more pieces. You could plaster over it again and paint it if you really wanted to be fancy, in which case I would recommend using the stucco texture or the plaster makes perfect texture. But this is Build Like a Nerd, so I am actually going to go through the painstaking work of matching up all of my timbers inside and out, which includes making sure that I have these facing the door like I have them outside, and using the same decorative sort of framing inside where these windows are. And I think that's all the work I made for myself. Now over here in the main living space, it's going to be very open. We're going to grab a fireplace. I'm going to use this one because I feel like it is the most true to the build, unless of course you actually do have a wide open fireplace such as one from Cats and Dogs or Cottage Living. Now I put my kitchen along the back wall here, just a simple sort of line setup with a refrigerator, some wooden cabinets, and of course a sink and all that stuff. Most of the furniture you'd find in these homes would be oak, which is sort of a mid-tone wood, and the default swatch for most of the items in this pack, so super handy. And of course that leaves plenty of space for a living area over here. But I just wanted to show you sort of where I put the dining table, because if you put it this way, that doesn't leave as much space. Now for the bathroom, as usual with these older style builds, this would have been added after the fact, so how you decide to put it together totally depends on, well, depends on you, depends on what your Sims need. It's definitely not going to be very large because it wasn't in the original plan of the house, so those tend to be quite small. And when you're putting in a tub, you want to make sure that the faucet side is accessible. That's the side the Sims actually use to get in and out. So there's a nice little bathroom on the main floor. Upstairs you can add a half wall or a little fence to the stairs there if you like. And I'm going to make sure that this bathroom actually has a full shower and everything in it, along with, of course, a toilet and a couple of sinks. I really like this get-together mirror. It has just enough detail to be interesting, but not so much that it's overly ornate. Like, it could fit anywhere, you know? Hello, Kazoo Man. Even though this is a fairly small build, you'd probably see a decent-sized family all crammed in here. Honestly, these bedrooms are pretty large, but that's just the way the game goes, you know? Now, before we move on to landscaping, if you made it this far in the video, obviously you're enjoying it and it would mean the world to me if you would let YouTube know by giving this video a like and subscribing if you haven't already. If you're a fan of the Tudor style, you're definitely going to want to come back for the next video where we talk about the more stylized American Tudor revival style. That's when we're going to get into more funky roof shapes, intricate facades, and more ins and outs and all that stuff. Much larger homes, more modern layouts, so definitely want to come back for that one. And as always, comment what styles you would like to see next. Storybook is already on the list. I know that's a very similar style to this one. And I'll also be talking about more English builds, like cottage style builds in the future, but you guys telling me what specifically you want to see does definitely influence which direction I take with these videos. With that said, let's talk about landscaping. Now, one thing that you absolutely need to do is add a little garden. The garden would be full of herbs and vegetables and basically provide medicines for the family, which is super important, especially when people still thought that you recovered from a fever by bleeding out, you know? Now, especially if I have the garden toward the front of the lot, I like to put a gate on it so that passersby don't just come in and steal my plants. Now for these planter boxes, you can actually put them right up to the wall on either side like that if you can still access the plants from this side. So this layout would work really well for getting plants in all of these, more space for trees or whatever. Now you don't need planter boxes in the game, of course. I just like adding them because it gives sort of a designated space to put the plants. Plus, if you ever need to move them around, it's a lot easier. And aside from the herb garden, again, if you were going in the more rural direction, you definitely want to have some livestock on hand. However, in this video, I want to talk to you guys about making a really nice little English cottage garden. Now, the appeal of this garden style is, of course, you have a whole bunch of plants and a whole bunch of different styles and shapes and sizes and colors, but it still fits together super duper well. And believe it or not, I do it in a nerdy way. So let's talk about that. So you want to start with one sort of shrub item. These are all the base game options, basically anything large-ish and non-flowering. For a garden this size, you want to pick one. For a larger garden, you could pick 2 or 3. I'm going to stick with this one. Next up, you're going to pick 3 flowers. So anything with a flower on it doesn't matter this size. So the hydrangeas are these little guys from the bush menu, literally anything from the flower menu. But you want to pick 3. These are the 3 I'm going to go with, and then after that you want to use either the low-lying pale yellow flowers or the Oopsa daisies, or some other similar low-lying green object. If you have island living, this is one of my favorite things to use. I just scale it down a bit. Highly recommend using rocks, but for the most part this is what you're going to start with. 1 bush, 3 flowers, and then 1 low-lying sort of filler plant. Go ahead and set those to the side. Grab your terrain paint. Grab some dirt, make it fairly soft, and then you're sort of going to outline where you want your plants to be. Organic shapes are going to work best. I sort of want a path coming up this general direction, so I'm going to start by placing my plants all in here. Once you have your sort of garden area outlined, pick your bush, and then you can just place it around in a total of an odd number. So you can place it and then you can resize it with the bracket keys to get some variation in there. I like holding Shift and Alt at the same time as I place, so that I can get more exact placement, more exact rotation angles, and keep placing plants. The Alt is what allows you to move stuff around, Shift is what makes it keep placing. Once you have your bushes in, the thing that I would do next would be actually add some stones if you want to go through and add those. Again, you can resize them using the bracket keys, which sometimes, especially if you're not sure which direction to go with your landscaping, it can be really helpful to just put down a couple of random giant rocks and pretend that you have to landscape around them like they're boulders or something. Next step, go through with your flowers. Same thing, hold Shift and Alt, and you're going to place 5 of one, 5 of the next one, and 5 of the last one, over and over again until you fill up your whole space. So I'll go back with my little yellow flowers and place 5 more again, and the white ones. And what this is going to do is give you what's going to look like a fairly even distribution of all of your plants while still looking really random, which is of course part of the charm of the English sort of garden type. And once you've done this, if it's not looking random enough or you're finding clumps of too many big plants on one spot, you can resize with those bracket keys, which helps a lot. Don't be afraid of open dirt, that's what the filler flower is for. But resizing gives more of that variety to the eye that we're so accustomed to seeing with this garden type. Now if this were a larger space, the next step to make it look even more diverse would be to go through and re-swatch some of your flowers. However, this space really isn't big enough for that, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to go through, again holding Shift and Alt, and try to cover up any dirt that's still showing with these low-lying flowers. There shouldn't be too much at this point, but it's just a nice little filler touch. And there you go, a beautifully diverse and crazy and yet somehow organized and purposeful garden. You can grab your dirt tool again to fill in the rest of that space, bring the softness down on the edge, and then grab some gravel or stone or whatever to make your path. Fill in all those little areas. Should look something like this. So that is the nerdy way to make an English garden. Now if you prefer more chaos and you just want to use like one of everything, go for it, but I like my gardens to have some structure to them even if the end goal is to make them look unstructured, and I feel like this is a really good way to do that. Get Together also has some of the absolute best garden decor items. You've got these like random little walls, this trellis which you can actually walk through, so I'm gonna put that over by my garden here. We've got a wheelbarrow, fancy bird bath, whatever this sundial thing is. Like, there are so many fantastic landscaping items. I really like these little stone benches for the garden as well. And then once you have that done, aka you decide you really need to stop and finish recording, go ahead and bring that soft terrain brush back to paint around your planter boxes, maybe make a little path coming into the garden area, paint under your foundation, all of that stuff. Now you just need to add a mailbox, which of course Get Together has the cutest mailbox ever as well, and a trash can. And once again, I almost forgot a chimney. Now the main thing you want to remember with the chimney is try and find one that has the chimney pots on top, which is kind of going to look like that. We don't really have any great chimney pot options for this pack. I actually really like this one. So I'm going to place some chimneys about where my fireplace is. And I could just keep building in this world forever and keep decorating, but we are going to do a little recap, and then I'll let you go. So what we now know as the Tudor style was initially just how homes were made. You take your timber framing, you'd fill it in with stone or brick or plaster, whatever was most available and accessible. The main floor would have some sort of storefront or shop where you'd run your family business. You would also have a wide open living space with a centralized fireplace where you do your cooking, all of the family activities, and all of that. Of course, this build is a bit modernized. We have a whole kitchen and separate dining space and a living space, but that could be as rustic or modern as you prefer. Bedrooms, if you were lucky enough to have separate bedrooms, would be on an upper floor with the centralized chimney carrying heat throughout the whole house. Up at the top of the house, you'll find steeply pitched cross gable roofs covered in either some sort of slate shingle or thatched. Windows will have multiple small panes, as that was what was cheapest, and you'll pretty much always see them grouped together in at least 2 or 3 windows per set. Doors would be thick wooden panels, generally arched, and outside you'd have some sort of herb garden and whatever else suited the area that you were building. In our case, we did an herb garden and sort of an English cottage garden. Oh, and I wanted to show you an item from the pack for in here that I forget about all the time, which is just this little guy, like the garden tools and stuff. So this entryway could be an entryway, could be another bathroom, could be a hallway, some sort of garden tool storage would make a lot of sense as well. And that is what I have for you guys today. If you're interested in downloading this specific home, it will be on the gallery. As always, details will be down below. There's only so much I can fit in a video like this, but if you want to learn more, the references will always be linked in that board in the description of the video. If you'd like to learn more about random building styles, I have a whole playlist here for you to check out, and if you're interested in more of the history of how the timber frames construction sort of died out and why we use 2x4 construction now, highly recommend checking out that video. As always, thank you so much for building with me today, and I look forward to building another Tudor with you again very, very soon. Bye!